If you clicked on this video, that means you're familiar with JUUL, maybe you've tried to quit, maybe you're super addicted, but you've had some struggles. So my goal with this video is to share a real personal story, my story that's semi-embarrassing. If you're a subscriber of this channel, you know we don't normally talk about JUULing or vaping, but it's something that got super out of hand for me. And I thought it'd be helpful for me to document my process of quitting, going from, you know, a pod and a half a day, this habit that just crept up on me. I'll share my story in there, be really transparent with you, to now where I'm 21 days clean of JUULing completely and why I'm never going back. Before I get into this video, a little bit on the structure. I feel it's going to be semi-long. When I was doing research on YouTube about how to quit JUULing, I found lots and lots of videos of people just talking, but no one was really showing you anything. They were telling you lots of stuff, but you know, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to go through it and live through it. So I documented my process of the first 7, 14, and 21 days JUULing. I actually quit right before a festival in Las Vegas, which is one of the worst times to quit. So I'll intersplice vlog footage. I'll also give you the 5 best tips to stop JUULing or vaping, kill the habit that you can use, because if you clicked on this video, chances are you're probably interested in quitting, right? Keep watching, smash that like button. Without further ado, here is my story. So in high school, I got mixed up with a bit of a rougher crowd. I was a drummer in a punk rock band in the hardcore scene, and I thought I was gonna go into the military. Had all this ambition, but I was really frustrated and depressed and an anxious kid. So I started chewing tobacco. All right, and I would go to high school, and then in between breaks, I would go out and, you know, pop a dip and start spitting everywhere. Very attractive habit. I remember one time driving in my 1999 Buick, and I would chew. That was one of my triggers, and I'd be spitting and chewing, and I would get so buzzed off the nicotine from chewing. I was like, is this legal? I feel dizzy. I feel like I'm gonna go off the side of the road. So I went to college, and my first gig was actually in my dorm room talking to New York Times bestselling authors and speakers on a podcast. It was called Paleo Hacks. We had everyone from Jim Quick to Mark Sisson, David Perlmutter, Dave Asprey, Dr. Josh Axe, all the who's who in the health and wellness space. And I remember I was so addicted to nicotine, to chewing, that I would be on these calls with them talking about, you know, how to remove toxins and eat organically. And in my head, I was thinking the whole time, okay, when is this over so I can go and pop a chew? I was like so contradictory because I was talking about all this health and wellness, but my actions were disgusting and the complete opposite. I remember the low point of that, and when I decided to quit chewing tobacco, was when I got in my car, my 99 Buick, and it was such a beater, such a lemon car, that the driver's door was locked. Okay, you couldn't use that, it was jammed. So I had to go in the passenger seat, climb over the middle console, and get in my 99 Buick. So I was doing that one time, and I was climbing over, and right there was that cup of sludge, just disgusting, and it spilled all over me, and I was so grossed out, just sludge going all over the place. I said, enough, no more, and I quit right then and there and didn't touch chew for 4 or 5 years. But the nicotine addiction didn't stop there. So I went on after college to tour in a band full-time, professionally, all around the world. And you know, there's a lot of smoking in venues, a lot of smoking on tour, and I wouldn't really smoke cigarettes that much, although I do enjoy them. Okay, I love the act of smoking something. I find it very relaxing, whether it's a cigar or you know, cigarettes. I'm not a big weed guy at all. I can't stand it. And I noticed myself going for the occasional cigarette on the road after a show, unwinding. And it started creeping up. I would travel around the world as well and stay in hostels, and everyone socially was smoking. And I was never a smoker, but it got to the point of where it was about a cigarette a day. Now, about a year or two ago, I was going through a really rough breakup. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, and I would smoke a cigarette every single night. And it got to the point of where I was like, I don't want this in my life. I'm not a smoker. I never said I would smoke cigarettes. This is gross. I felt out of integrity with what I talk about with healthy habits and thinking of myself as a healthy person, but this nicotine habit kept creeping up. One day, my friend told me about JUULing. It's kind of when it was getting popular. I saw celebrities do it on Instagram, saw people joking about being in the JUUL gang. What the heck, I'll pick this up and start. And I loved it. And it was scary because it felt so good. It was a USB. It didn't make you smell. It didn't stay on your clothes. You could do it when I was working, right? Because I work from home with this YouTube channel. So I'd just be sitting there in the morning and juuling. Started pretty innocently, here and there, occasionally, about, half a pod a day. Which if you're watching this, I'm guessing you know what a pod is, but if you don't and you're just entertained by the story, one pod of the JUUL, it's about $4, and it's about a pack of cigarettes is the equivalent of nicotine in an entire pod. So that's about a half a pack a day if you do half a pod a day. But then it started creeping up because you could do this JUUL anywhere, anytime. So pretty soon I found myself going through a pod a day, and then it ramped up to the point of where it was about a month ago, which was 1.5 pods a day. Wake up and first thing I would do is hit my snooze button or turn off the alarm and then reach for the JUUL because it was the first thing I had to do every single morning. The habit got so bad, I was actually doing a collaboration with this big time multimillionaire in his mansion up in Vancouver. And we had a whole day of shooting YouTube videos and promoting his product and talking about sales and marketing and success. I had to take a break in between and go take my JUUL and start hitting it in his bathroom. And they were like, Clark, you ready? You ready to come out and film? You ready? I'm like, yeah, one second. Just got to use the bathroom. I joke about it now, but it just makes me, looking back on it, it makes me realize how addicting that habit was and how it corrupted my mindset. I'd be on planes going to shows for my band and I would get so anxious about a 4-hour flight. Oh, it's 4 hours sitting here, and I would just look around and I would check the map and be like, when can I get off this plane to hit this JUUL? I'm telling you all this so hopefully you can relate that this is normal. This is like the struggle of addiction. And yes, I've watched every single episode of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, so I feel credible to talk about this. But the low point, guys, was when I was in one of those airport bathrooms. I would sneak in, it's disgusting, and I would start hitting my JUUL in one of the stalls. And there's people literally taking dumps next to you, just smelling that and hitting this USB stick. I mean, this is common for people, okay? This is not, I know this sounds bizarre if you don't JUUL, but like if you're JUULing, you're sitting on the other side like, yeah, me too. And that's when you know it's a real addiction that's time to quit. So that's my struggle with nicotine, from chewing tobacco to the occasional cigarette to JUULing to where it spirals out of control. And hopefully you see in that story a little bit of how you don't set out with the intention of doing a pod and a half a day. But if you have kind of an addictive personality like myself, I'm obsessive, okay? So it creeps up on you slowly. And it starts with 1 cigarette, and then it goes to 2, 3, and pretty soon a pack a day. It starts with half a JUUL pod, then it goes to a full one, then 1.5 a day. Pretty soon you're in an airport bathroom, smoking next to people taking dumps. So I'm getting the suitcase packed for Vegas right now. It's currently 2 o'clock, so this is officially 24 hours without the JUUL, without nicotine. I'm documenting this in case you're trying to quit, and I'll just tell you what I'm feeling right now. It feels like you're very thirsty, but there's nothing to drink, all right? That's like your body wanting the nicotine. It's not out. It takes about 72 hours for it to totally get out of your system, and then from what I've read, the cravings like go away completely, pretty much. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but right now even talking on camera, it's really hard to formulate thoughts. It feels like you have like this intense brain fog where you can't connect sentences. It's not like the end of the world or like painful. It's just more annoying is what it feels like. I never really thought that JUUL was a free ride, but I just, for whatever reason, thought it wasn't really a big deal. I wasn't like ashamed of it deep down inside. I kind of joked around that, yeah, hitting the JUUL, and I posted some photos with it even. I didn't really care. But I started seeing the news articles roll out about, 16-year-olds getting hospitalized from vaping, kids' lungs collapsing, that 1 in 4 teens is sneaking out and JUULing during high school. And before we go down this path, yes, okay, we gotta pause here because there are some chemicals in fake THC pods that people were vaping that cause a lot more problems than, say, JUUL brand. Okay, there's things like vitamin E acetate and diethyl, I believe is how you pronounce it. All these compounds that aren't in JUUL that are in other vapes that are causing a lot of problems. Yes, I know that. But safer doesn't mean safe. It's probably not a free ride just JUULing. And so when you look at the ingredients in JUUL pods, right, they say, oh, they're all food grade ingredients. Like you can ingest them in food products and you'll be totally fine. So if you smoke them, it's not a big deal. But scientists will say that when you actually inhale things, that's a much different process than ingesting it. Okay, so we don't actually know how it affects you when you're inhaling those chemicals, even though they're food grade. Does that make sense? It's a totally different reactive process, and your lungs are probably more sensitive than this, you know, mouth to anus pipeline of intestines and enzymes and stomach acids and all this stuff. I mean, your lungs don't have that. So it affects you in a totally different way. There's not enough research, and that was scary to me. So I caved, I went to Walgreens right here, and I bought some of the world's most expensive gum. Holy shit, you guys know how much this costs? 64 bucks, and it was on sale. They wanted like 80 bucks for this stuff. I'm like, no wonder nobody uses this to quit. They'd go broke. But hey, I guess, you know, it's a small price to pay for getting off the JUUL. Now I'm a little conflicted because I'm like, I wanted to do it cold turkey, right? Hopefully this weans me off, and my plan with this is to chew it as much whenever, no limits, just a lateral shift from JUUL to gum, and then eventually reduce down that gum to normal gum, and then get off of it. Woohoo! Vegas with Nicorette, baby. This makes so much more sense why it was 75 bucks. Check this out. Check how much they give you in a box. What the heck? I'm gonna be chewing this for years. Side note, you know you're getting old at the ripe age of 28, just had my birthday, when you pull out the user's guide and you're actually reading it for fun and curiosity. Let me learn how to use this gum properly. What's next? I'm gonna use a cane and driving gloves. Well, gotta get chewing. Now we do a pack of these a day. Some of you probably thinking, why don't you just go cold turkey? Because in my experience, cutting things out, I have a very addictive personality, whether that's alcohol, whether that's women, whether that's work, whether that's JUULing, and I don't do well by extreme. For me, if it's 0, then I relapse and go 100%. I just know from experience. So I feel like lateral shifts I perform better in. Real quick, can I just go on a rant between cigarettes and JUULing and lung cancer, and while we're here and all this stuff, my thoughts that really scared me was that, okay, cigarettes, everyone's like, oh, use JUUL to get off cigarettes. She doesn't smoke anymore, good for JUUL. But like, think about it, cigarettes got popularized in what, the 1900s, when people really started mass producing them and consuming them. Okay, and JUUL's been around since 2013, I believe, or somewhere around there. The first electronic cigarette was like 2007 in the US. Smoking's been around for 120 years, popularized in the United States. Vaping's been around for about 10. And you're already seeing these lung diseases, people dying, people in their teens keeling over and dying. At least with cigarettes, you can smoke them pretty aggressively for like 70 years, and then you get all these problems, or 40 years even. With this, you're smoking it for maybe 10 years. You know, some of these kids coming out said they only smoked for a year and a half, and they're getting all these problems. So that was just me processing, like, wait a minute, okay, yeah, it helps people get off cigarettes, but is vaping actually safer when you can smoke this for 40 and you can smoke this for a year, and it seems like this creeps up really fast. There's videos on YouTube where this guy pumped cotton balls full, but when you study the lungs, they're like little balls and clusters that inflate and deflate. And when things are too humid and you get moisture in your lungs, that's actually what causes pneumonia. That's like why it's kind of wet lung disease, word on the street. Just from my own research, I have a suspicion that that's what's happening when you're inhaling vapor into your lungs. It's probably not good to get that much concentration of anything in there. And some residue probably stays in there in your lungs. I do remember this. So I would do about a pod and a half a day, and I came home one time. I remember breathing like this, like, and I felt like this gargle in my lungs, like there was pneumonia almost, which is a common thing you hear these people in the hospitals getting hospitalized for like vaping. They say it fills your lungs up because some of that liquid doesn't exhale fully, it stays in there, and you can get this almost like pneumonia cough and this symptoms of pneumonia that are caused from vaping and all that fluid being in your lungs. And that to me was the scariest thing ever. I'm like, okay, this is not normal. This is bad. Beyond just the mental addiction of, you know, being on a plane, being anxious, okay, when am I gonna get off? You know, gotta do this for the nicotine hit. To now crossing over to the physical component of that fluid in lungs, of that pneumonia, of all that bad stuff, that's scary to me. So right then and there, I was so freaked out, started doing all this research, and much like yourself, I came to YouTube and I just typed in how to quit JUULing. There's a guy talking about a story of his friend who was hospitalized after a year and a half of JUULing. And he said he literally didn't do anything else. No off-brand vapes, no weed, no nothing, just JUUL. and he was hospitalized. Now at this time, about a month ago, I had been JUULing for about 9 months, 10 months, give or take. That's not that much longer, you know? And maybe it's borrowed time, maybe it's, and that really freaked me out. And so I quit right then and there. This is what happens when you let your girlfriend choose the room. The pinkest room ever with some giant flamingos. Can you guys guess where we're staying? I'll give you a hint. The Flamingo. What we got for a view, babe? Can't really see. So it's officially 48 hours, a little over since the last hit of the JUUL. Going pretty strong here in Vegas. Hasn't actually been that hard. I think the Nicorette gum has been helping, so that is a little cheating. And also the pizza, definitely helping. I've had kind of a sore throat. I'm not sure what that's from what I've Googled. It is withdrawal from actually inhaling smoking or vapor or whatever. But yeah, it feels just like a sore throat. And then I do notice myself eating a lot more. That's because when you inhale all that nicotine, you're getting a dopamine, serotonin release, so you get that same thing from food. And so that's why your body craves it more and eats more when you're withdrawing. I'll keep you updated. We're going to the festival today, so that's the next time we will talk. The next section of this video are the 5 tips for you, and you can use these for any addiction, any bad habit, anything at all. The 5th tip. So I mentioned I tour in a band, and I met this guy who I became really, really good friends with, and he used to drink like no other. Okay, people, they're like, look, you've met him, but you haven't met the real him. Let's just call him John. You haven't met the real John. The old John was crazy. He used to drink 2 bottles of Evan Williams whiskey a day. He would wake up, he would drink a whole 5th of Evan Williams whiskey, and then they had to hide the second one from him for after the show, and then he would drink it. So 2 bottles a day. He did this for like 10, 20 years. And then one day he finally quit. He said enough, and he quit cold turkey. How do you go from 2 bottles a day for like 10 or 20 years to 0? Like, do you ever get cravings for it? Is it ever hard? Because he'll go to bars with people. He's around it in the music scene a lot. And he says, not a day, not at all. I'm never tempted at all. And we were talking about this, and I'm like, why? He's like, because it's 100%. I'm never going back. 100%'s a breeze, but 99% is a bitch. If there's that 1% in you that's like not fully committed to something, it's so easy to slip up. It's like if you make 100% commitment to go to the gym every single day. Well, okay, that's easy. You know, your shoes are right there, you put them on and you go. But if there's that 99% commitment, like, oh, you know, today, maybe today's not the best day, I'll just skip it. I deserve it. I've worked out 3 days in a row. So I love that when applying it to anything habit forming, like drinking or smoking or vaping. If it's 100% commitment, then you're so much more likely to follow through with it. Tip number 4, there's 2 ways to motivate a donkey, all right? There's the carrot where you dangle it in front of someone, and then there's the stick where you whip it and tell that donkey to move. Human beings are the same way, okay? There's the pleasure, and then there's also the pain. And these are the 2 ways we can motivate ourselves to make a change. Psychologists who study habit, okay, like in Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, great book on that. He talks that we'll work much harder to get out of the pain, because that's like death, it's gonna kill us, than we will to get into pleasure. And a simple example of this is, would you liquidate your savings account right now and go put it on black in Vegas? Of course you wouldn't. Why? Because there's the pain of losing it all outweighs the fact that you might double your money, you know, 50-50. So you gotta use pain to motivate yourself to make change and get to 100%. That's the only way. So with me, when I started researching all the negatives of JUULing, right? Being in a hospital bed and seeing my mom walk in or my girlfriend walk in, all the money it was costing me, feeling ashamed of something, all those negatives right there, that motivates you to make a change. So for you, if you're trying to quit, write down all the reasons that it's costing you or what it will cost you in a year, 2, 5 years down the road. One last point on this, something I use on myself with habits and making changes, I'm like, do I want to be doing this when I'm 40? You know, I was thinking about JUULing. I'm like, do I really want to be a 40-year-old sucking down a USB stick outside? Like, no, I don't plan on doing this when I'm 40. So I'm going to have to quit eventually. Why not quit ahead? All right, the 3rd tip. I mentioned this in the story briefly. It's on habits, that habits don't get removed, they just change forms. Here's a clip on that now. Just landed in Louisville, Kentucky. It's officially 1 week. Thought I would do an update since quitting the JUUL. I'm doing it in the airport because it made me conscious of triggers, okay? And until I really struggled with this nicotine addiction and habits, I kind of knew what triggers were. Like if you have ice cream in the freezer, it's 11 at night and you want to eat it, you're like, oh man, this is normally when I eat ice cream, and you go for it. But man, there's some triggers that are so weird, like traveling when I get stressed in and out of airports, seeing people outside like smoking, like immediately when I get off a plane, I'd be like, time to hit the JUUL. Or even in between layovers in like rest stop bathrooms. It's not always about removing a habit, because that creates a vacuum. If you study habit research, Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit talks about this. Habits don't get taken away, they just change forms. So now every time I get that habit of landing or taking off, I'm chewing gum. It's not exactly the same, but it works. If you're struggling with triggers, which is what you're gonna run into when you try to quit anything, think about what can you replace it with instead of just trying to deprive yourself. Does that make sense? I gotta go get my luggage. We're playing a show in Kentucky. We're actually opening for Guns N' Roses. I tour in a band, so that's my other gig if you're new here. It's kind of the night gig, and then YouTube's the day gig. Tip number 2, you know what the 2 most powerful words in the English language are? I am. Okay, I am. That is your identity. What you identify with, you will stay consistent with. So people who say it's hard to quit smoking because I am a smoker, well, yeah, because they're still a smoker. So for you, if you feel like you are a vapor or a jeweler or whatever, you gotta remove that from your identity and say, I'm not that at all. People who are most shredded fitness model competitors, they're not tempted by that because in their mind, they're fit. They're the fit guy, the fit girl. And so all their actions follow that. The last point, number 1, this is the most powerful tip, and it's all about that pain pleasure and focusing on the pain. That is to do research, okay? Literally research this. The more you can research and kind of scare yourself straight, like Prison Mike in The Office.
I'm Prison Mike, but I am here to scare you straight.
But in all seriousness, the more articles you read, like that's scary, don't ignore it, dive into it. And don't look for confirmation bias from people who are like, oh, vaping's okay, because especially JUUL, they don't use X, Y, and Z chemicals. And I was researching, okay, well, why is the CDC on this? You know, the CDC, they're like on emergency protocol with vaping because so many people are doing it. They're normally on emergency protocol for like viruses and things like Ebola or swine flu. So the fact that they're pursuing it and looking into it is pretty big deal. They don't just do that for anything. I was reading in a finance book, totally unrelated to this, but I love parallels in different industries that can really teach you a lot. In that finance book, it was talking about Warren Buffett and all these hedge fund managers. And they're like, what's the worst financial advice or biggest mistake people make with finances? And they say it's 4 words when they're investing in stocks. This time it's different, okay? And thinking that it's the exception instead of the track record. And I think that with JUULing or vaping or whatever, we have that same thing. Like, yeah, those stories, but it won't happen to me, right? Or, oh, that's happening in Chicago, but here in Seattle, it's different. This time it's different. Everyone has that bias towards themselves. We think we're never gonna get cancer. We think we're not gonna die young. We think we're not gonna get in car accidents. We think that our lungs aren't gonna collapse, that it's in the news and other people are gonna do it. It can happen to them and it can happen to us just as easy. Those are the 5 tips on how to quit. The only thing I ask here, you don't have to buy anything. I'm not selling you anything in this video. I'm a marketer, so that's rare for me. If you know somebody who's addicted to JUULing and they're trying to quit, okay, because they have to want to quit in order for this to be effective, okay, or if they've tried or you think they want to try, send them this video. It can be in an email, a text message, tag them. Hopefully one thing in this video or this process is enough to push them over the edge. 3 to 7 days from now, you could be totally cured. You could be totally JUUL free. If you want to do it the gum route or if you want to do it just cold turkey, you can do this, okay? It's not impossible, okay? Don't feel trapped there. Feel inspired that, you know what? In 7 days, you could rid yourself from this completely. Comment down below if that's you. Don't buy into the conspiracy of it's so hard, you can never do it, you're too weak to quit. That's garbage, guys. I'm Clark with Refusing to Settle. Consider subscribing and like this video. See you in the next one. Maybe we'll do an update sometime down the road. And until then, stop settling, start living. See ya.